This is a Step Beyond the Fire podcast. My name is Cully. I'm a land manager and a wildlife biologist here in my home state of Florida. I invite you to join me on a journey as I seek to document the little-known stories told by those who use fire for the benefit of the land, also known as prescribed fire. So come on, let's head into the field and meet the people where the flame ends and new life begins. Welcome back to A Step Beyond the Fire. This is Cully, your host, here today with Cynthia Balboni. Cynthia Balboni is a wildlife biologist working at Camp Blanding Military Installation. She's been there since 2011. Some of her job responsibilities involve managing for different types of wildlife species, including the endangered RCW, or red-cockaded woodpecker. She's also a prescribed burn manager. Has a lot of great experience with that, and we're excited to talk with her about that today.
Yeah, it's good to see you, Cully. It's been a while.
Great to see you. Yes. So another part of this is Cynthia and I went to school together. It's been, I guess that was around 2008 or 2009. We were in the same class together, right?
Yeah, I actually graduated in December of 2008, so
December
it's been about almost 15 years, I would say.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I appreciate you getting together with us. We're actually at Morningside Nature Center today, which is a small remnant piece of sandhill that's left here in north central Florida. It's actually within the city of Gainesville city limits. And I particularly think this area is beautiful because it's one of my areas that I manage. So
yeah, when we were talking earlier and you asked, how long it's been since I've been here, and I can honestly say I don't think I've ever been here. But it's it's pretty neat that this is kind of situated, right here on like University Avenue with the airport nearby.
Oh yes, we could talk about smoke management issues here all day. There's a lot here to contend with. That's kind of the biggest thing that drives our decision making here, is what direction are we going to put smoke. So
I think that's just with any prescribed fire now in Florida, with the urban expansion, smoke management is a key to any kind of fire regime that you would have. You always got to consider your smoke.
So we're on the Yellow Triangle Trail. Don't worry, I know the way. So before we get into some of this stuff that you're up to these days, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into conservation work?
Yeah, so I guess, with probably echoes what a lot of your previous podcast interviewers, I grew up in a small town, in rural Florida, north, kind of over in the Tallahassee area. And it was just, a simple way of life, surrounded by woods. And, with any kid that kind of grew up in the 90s, you just had the freedom to roam. And
no cell phones.
Yeah, nothing.
Yeah.
Just be home by dark. It's pretty much the only thing that was expected.
So were you fishing? Were you hunting?
Yeah, all of it. Stuff? Yeah, all of it. I had horses, so we would ride our horses after school, or go fishing in the ponds.
I think that's how you and I became pals, because we had a lot of common interests. I love that.
Yeah, we were constantly exploring, building forts, just kind of like hanging out in the woods. So it just kind of made sense to continue that into a career path.
You might hear some of the planes in the background. We're actually pretty close to the flight path of the Gainesville Regional Airport, which is one of the other pressing concerns that we have to contend with on this property here. But, well, that's great. So you grew up spending time outdoors, and then that just evolved into this great life experience that you're on now.
Yeah, pretty much. When I first started out, my first 2 years in college at Abraham Baldwin Agricultural College in Tifton, Georgia, where I got my wildlife management AA. And if it was a 4-year program, I probably would have stayed there. But it was only 2 at the time. So I transferred back down to UF, and it was kind of a big culture shock for me, to be honest. Gainesville is definitely different from anything I'd ever experienced before. But, finished up there, got my wildlife ecology and conservation degree. And
the best degree in the world.
Yeah, it's working out pretty well for me right now.
Well, and being a full-time wildlife biologist and having been, doing that for years now, you're working on a bunch of different interesting projects, right?
Yeah, I mean, well, my main focus, especially during the summer, is the red-cockaded woodpecker. We have about 41 breeding clusters, and that's just a group. What they call a group is a cluster. And so we manage those, and by managing, we monitor the population. We band the nestlings, so for identification purposes, and then we follow up after they leave the nest, and just so we have a good idea of the exact number we have on Camp Landing. And then, with that, you got to manage the lands for them. They really need prescribed fire in order to thrive. They don't really like oak mid-story or really dense canopies. So
we're seeing a little bit of that here right now.
Yeah, it's pretty open.
We're looking across a recently burned unit. We did this one back in February.
Yeah, it looks great.
Wiregrass, got some nice understory species coming back. But I saw a picture of you the other day climbing. You guys were about 30 feet up, right?
Yeah.
You do artificial nest cavity installs.
Yeah, Jess and I both, are my coworker, Jess Baker, and I, along with another coworker, Hazel Mitchell, we install artificial cavities as needed to assist the group in becoming successle in breeding. And
that's pretty tough to do.
Yeah,
you're way up in the top of those. I mean, at least 20 feet up.
Yeah,
right? That's kind of the threshold.
Yeah, 20 feet is about where we like to put the cavities, just for ease of climbing, but also high enough to where prescribed fire won't mess up the box, because the artificial boxes, they have PVC opening in it, so those will melt. So yeah, we do install those, but we're trying to do less of those and just let the birds kind of build their own cavities. And so this year they've been really good at that. We've had several new nest trees in the 40-foot range. So had to do some pretty tall climbs.
That's a little scary. Get way up as high as that.
Yeah, and I don't know if anybody remembers, in the past couple of weeks, it's been quite windy. So it's kind of like rodeo up there, just swaying back and forth.
Get a little motion sick.
Yeah, it's like
swaying back and forth, trying to plunge cut with a saw. Ooh.
Yeah, we tend to do the inserts in the wintertime whenever the sap flow is less. That
makes sense.
Yeah, and it's just better for your saws.
Yeah, that's true.
But yeah, right now we're full on monitoring, so we're banding a lot of chicks. This coming Tuesday, we have 7 clusters to band, so that'll be about 20 chicks.
Wow. Yeah, that's exciting. You guys ever post any photographs anywhere, or is that?
Yeah, to our personal Instagrams, we will, or Facebooks.
Okay.
Not so much on like the Camp Landing page per se.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, because that's really interesting to see that work that you guys are doing, and definitely a very important part of the whole big piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, they're definitely pretty important to flatwoods and sandhill ecosystems, and because they're there and we have to manage for them, those are the areas that see a better fire return. So they see a lot of prescribed burning, and with that you just see increase overall biodiversity between the fauna and flora.
I think it's good to get, one of the reasons why I wanted to bring you on the show was so you can talk a little bit about managing or doing land management on military lands, which is a little bit of a different shade. You guys have some different entities to coordinate with, right? And along those lines, I'd like to talk a little bit about some of the tools of the trade, but more specifically, what types of equipment that you all use on prescribed burns, because everybody, you and I both know that everybody uses a little bit of a different techniques. You use, sometimes if you're on, this area that we're standing at, this is only 6 acres, and we had, I think, 8 or 9 people here that day, and 2 trucks with slip-in units with 75 to 100 gallons in the back of the trucks, and that was pretty much it for the day. Did a lot of walking. You guys do a much bigger scale.
Yeah.
Right?
So Burning on the military installation, first and foremost, we're there to train troops. That's really what Camp Blanding is there for. But the troops also need nice areas to train. And so with that, we kind of get the environmental needs as, we can accomplish a lot of that through prescribed fire. So
it keeps the understory cleared out. It keeps the areas from an operational perspective. That's what I'm hearing. It keeps it a little bit better shape too, right?
Yeah, and not to mention, like we have over 100 wildfires a year, and
that's a lot. Do you go to most of them, or
well, that's what I'm saying. We have 100 wildfires because the troops set them. They use tracer rounds and stuff like that. So,
wow.
Whether we plan to intentionally burn it or not, a lot of the times, our impact area is on fire daily. From just those munition types. So,
yeah.
With that, you can expect that the impact area is probably some of the nicest habitat we actually have on post. So yeah, the troops set a lot of fires, and then with summer rains and lightning storms, you can expect those start a few fires. But through our prescribed fire program, we can pretty much mitigate the intensity of those by setting the fires on purpose and burning them the way that we want to burn. So, if that area of fresh black catches a lightning strike, it's probably not gonna, you probably won't even notice.
What does that usually look like? If you go up to a wildfire, are you saying, okay, let's take a look at this unit, let's burn the rest of this out and let the fire basically pull together, right?
Yeah, so any of the wildfires that are military caused, we like to burn those out. We call them in use, fires.
Okay.
And with the impact area being the way it is, you can't just go put a plow on the ground. That's dangerous.
Because of the unexploded ordnance,
yes,
right?
Exactly.
So exactly. You can't really. You gotta tread a little lightly.
Yeah, a little bit. It can get a little sketch sometimes, even when we're doing burnout operations, depending on, what part of the impact area we're in. It's one of those things where you light the road and you don't hang out, and watch the fire run, into the block. You kind of light it and get out of there. That's just basically the impact area. Everywhere else, it takes a lot of planning. We know what winds for particular units that we need to burn off of.
Yep.
And that can also create challenges. You get the fire shadows, and so it would be nice if we could, change that up. But as it is with, major highways and schools and airports nearby, a lot of units we can only burn on a south, basically.
Yeah, I totally understand that. So y'all have urban interface that you're dealing with, or nearby?
Yeah.
Is it homes and businesses, or more military installations you just got to keep smoke off of?
No, not so much the installation itself, but we're just south of Jacksonville, Middleburg, Orange Park area. So that has
very true.
Yeah. there's a lot of people there, and more coming every day that maybe aren't accustomed, to being in Florida and seeing, smoke in the air. So
yeah,
you definitely just want to keep that in mind, but also being on the installation, we can also be our own smoke shed, since we're a little bit over 73,000 acres.
Wow, man, that's a lot. So, that's a lot to manage.
Yeah, if we can keep our smoke internal, then there's no issues. The biggest issues I would think would be, during our big aerial burns. We'd like to get.
You get in a helicopter? we talk about helicopters a lot.
Yeah, it's funny you ask. Just a couple weeks ago, apparently there hasn't been a class in quite a long time, but there was an opportunity a couple weeks ago through FWC to get that training done. So myself and two of my coworkers participated in the Air Ops course, where we learned the old machines, and then the new Dragon Ball machines. Got to put those in the helicopter, do a little test flight, and now we're just kind of waiting to get an actual good burn day to have that training signed off on to where we'll be like certified operators. So, yeah.
Wow. Well, so walk me through what a typical, I know it's using this term is probably not the right way to say it, but what does a relatively normal burn day look like? what's your routine and what kind of stuff or equipment are you getting ready in the morning when you're?
Right. So, if we have about, I guess, 7 people that we would call like torch draggers, internal lighters, along with like maybe that and a little bit more, holding elements. And so just kind of figure out where we're going to go. We rarely do anything under 100 acres. We'd like to, get the most out of a burn day, just depending on where we are. Like if you're burning flatwoods, the acreage is probably going to be a little smaller. Whereas
Sure.
sandhill, we can do 600 acres in a day. So it just depends on, where we're burning. Dormant season, which is, in the fall, wintertime, we're burning primarily flatwoods. In the summer, we're burning sandhills. So, the equipment is different based on those fires. On flatwoods, you need just a lot more torch draggers and holding elements, whereas sandhill, you don't really need any torch draggers because we use ATVs.
Yes, the all-important ATV. I've had a fair amount of experience on those ATVs. Like you said, it depends on the ecosystem type, because you may not want to run an ATV through, because we're looking across a nice, beautiful sandhill right now. It's a lot of wiregrass. There's some toothache grass and pretty diverse
this
areas.
is nice right here.
And if you run an ATV through there, I mean, you're gonna see those tire tracks probably for a long time. So we try to, we would never necessarily burn in a sandhill, but maybe in some music flatwoods where it's not as much of an impact.
I just think, with the sandhill, typically you can tolerate a more intense fire, move at a lot faster pace, lay a lot more fuel on the ground. So with an ATV, it allows us to get those areas done pretty quickly. And, you talked about smoke management. That's a big key. Either you reduce your acres or you get it done. Early enough.
So you do use ATVs on sandhill?
That's the only place we use.
Oh, well,
ATVs.
Maybe I'm not. So in my experiences, I've seen folks only use it on music flatwoods, but maybe I need to be open to the idea of using it on sandhill.
It's like the equipment.
If you're not noticing a lot of damage, I always just had assumed that, man, we don't use it on this because of all these concerns, but maybe you guys aren't seeing that.
Yeah, anytime you add, complexity, always the risk increases. It's like just looking at these palmettos in here. Well, the more mature palmetto has, a taller neck on it. So that's something that you could get the four-wheeler hung up on. You can turn it over, because whenever our ATVs carry about 10 gallons of water for self-preservation and and about 10 gallons of burn mix. So it becomes very top heavy. So if you hit a stump hole or, a stub or anything, that just increases the risk of getting yourself hurt and, potentially burning up the equipment. So in a sandhill, it's much more open. You can kind of see in front of you. Yeah. So there's that. Yeah. That's where we primarily use them at.
Okay. Yeah. I like that. It definitely, you're right about that, because there's a safety component to all of this. When you strap a 10-gallon torch on the back of an ATV with a 3.5-foot wand sticking out behind you stringing fire, you better dang well know where you're headed and how to shut that thing off if something goes sideways.
Yeah, and that's where our equipment differs from the stuff I've seen that like Florida Wildlife Commission or uses. Is ours isn't a static torch. It's actually connected to what you can picture as like pressure washer nozzle.
Oh, okay.
And it has a wick attached to the end of it, and I control the flow of fuel, and therefore I can also reach it. I can blow it out quickly, and then concentrate on getting the ATV unstuck or turned around. Whereas those ones that just kind of stick out the back, you can't really see what it's doing. You turn the pup off, it might still be dripping, which can cause issues.
Yeah,
I know
there is a little bit of that. There is a little bit of that, I will say. Well, maybe can you send me a picture?
Absolutely.
Of what the setup is, and then I'll post that to the Instagram page.
Yeah.
And the Instagram is @A-Step-Beyond-the-Fire. It's our Instagram. So I try to post pictures of things that we're talking about on there so that people can get a little bit better idea of what things look like.
But yeah, I've definitely
We'll take a quick walk across
sure.
this little bridge here and take a look at these music flatwoods.
Yeah, I've
Some neat
definitely
stuff
gotten
here.
myself hung up. I've
Yeah.
turned the bike over.
Oh my gosh, there's nothing worse than that.
Yeah.
It's that moment of panic where I was doing the worst turnover I ever had was we were burning third row thinned pines that were planted pines that were in this area called Matanzas State Forest, and it hadn't seen fire in about 8 or 9 years.
Oh yeah.
So
That's pretty much
palmettos that were about 8 feet tall, 6 to 8 feet tall, and yeah, like you said, I got hung up on one of those stumps, and next thing you know, the whole ATV is on its side, and there's fire strung behind me, and you got to get that thing back up on its on its feet pretty quick.
Yeah,
That kind of stuff happens.
Yeah, I would imagine a 9-year rough. That's pretty much just a re-entry burn at that point.
Yeah,
and
it was.
Go slow.
It was like 300 acres too.
Oh wow.
Oh man, it was a lot, but they can be a really effective tool when it comes to a bigger area like that when you need to get it back into rotation.
Yeah, most recently, I think the closest call that I had was I was stringing fire through about 180 acres of sandhill, and I could see my out. That's one of the things. It's like you not only got to control your torch and how much fire you're dropping, but you're looking up and around you, behind you.
Yep.
All these kind of things. There's so much you have to pay attention to. And I saw my out, so I dropped a dot. Well, I didn't see that on the edge where the fire shadow there was a down sandpine tree. Well, I couldn't. It was too large for me to get over it, and then I already had fire behind me, and it just kind of worked out. At that particular time, I was able to blow the torch out first try, put that away. Put the ATV in neutral and get it to go in reverse, pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Which sometimes it doesn't always work that way.
Sometimes you got to get in there and pull the winch out or get somebody to come in there and help you. Jeez.
Or it's just those, seconds matter.
Yep.
In that particular moment. And, you're just hoping that all the things fall into place in order for you to get out safely. I would have been fine, but nobody wants a burned up ATV on their record.
That's very true. And that does happen.
Yep.
And that does happen. And people do get hurt. But people get, we talk a little bit about safety on prescribed burns. I mean, the fact of the matter is people do get hurt on burns. And people have died from prescribed burning. It's a inherently dangerous activity.
Yeah, I don't think people realize that so much. It's like, oh, it's so cool. You get to go set the woods on fire. Like, yeah, what they don't tell you is, like you fall in a stump hole and, get a stab to the knee or, get caught up in vines, and it's just physically grueling. Nobody wants to stand near you after because you smell and you look funny. And yeah, it's just, it takes a lot of toll on the body for sure.
So we talk a lot about how fire changes the landscape on this show and how the positive impacts are seen for many years afterwards. How has fire changed you personally in that way?
Yeah, it's definitely, caused me to grow and think about, more things. Whereas, early on in your career, you're just, do what you're told to do and not really think of why you're doing it.
Sure.
And, now whenever, even while we're walking around, I'm looking around, I'm thinking, I'm processing.
Yep.
And I think that's just probably the biggest change it's had on me is just, growing as a land manager, as a conservationist, and as a Floridian. Like I said, these landscapes are changing, and there's not so much out there, for future generations really to appreciate. So while we're here, while we're doing this job, we want to leave it and maintain it in the best way that we can.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. I would say that it definitely opens your eyes to a lot of unique interactions that if you're we're two people hiking through the woods right now, if we haven't been working in this type of in this type of work, we wouldn't really see the land for what the way that you through those eyes, you know, of understanding the nuances, understanding how the small interactions that happen in this landscape unfold over time. I guess what I'm trying to say is that you view the land in a different way.
Yeah, just kind of like to extend on that story. I walked in my office one day and just like had this thought in my mind and wanted to run it by my coworkers. And I was like, so do you guys, whenever you're driving down the road, just look at the woods on either side and just say, man, I really want to burn that? And, their answer was, yeah, like all the time.
So you see it, yeah.
We're constantly looking and you're looking at like how we would do that.
Yeah.
Whether, which season, what type of fire we'd use, all that kind of stuff. And, just, always looking and always seeing like how we could make things a little better.
When I step into an area like this, for instance, we're in some Music Flatwoods now, it's more of a periodically wet soils. You've got sort of a transition to the south of us, sloping downward into the creek.
We call that a trapping feature.
So that is not an escape route.
No.
That is a little tricky to get in and out of there. Oh. But I'm looking at this, seeing that, okay, we're right on the cusp of we need to get some fire in this area, get it looking better, try to pick it on a day where we've got enough.
When was the last time?
Enough wind to push through. I think this was burned about 3, maybe 4 years ago. Yeah. I think 3 or 4 years. So we're right on the cusp.
She's ready.
Yep. There's some nice huckleberries too I was eating.
Yeah, the blueberries on Camp Landing are just going nuts right now. They're nice little wood snacks.
There's some blueberries too. Blueberries and huckleberries. Yeah, there's a lot here. There's a lot of diverse plant species. A lot of species that are dependent on fire in one way, shape, or form or another, and it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, and just looking at this from like a Camp Landing perspective, like if you were a trainer out there on the reservation, you don't really want to bust off through something that hasn't been burned. It's dense. You can't see your feet. Most people don't get excited to see snakes. I mean, I do.
I'm one of those people who does not get that excited.
But so yeah, you just like, the ticks are bad. We had a little bit of conversation about that, how I've just got annihilated by ticks in the past couple of weeks. And, it's like if you maintain, a good burn rotation, the vegetation layer becomes less dense. You can see, you can, transverse through the woods a lot more easier and, kind of mitigate some of those pests as well. Yeah.
Have you had any major life challenges that you've had to kind of overcome to get where you are today?
I would imagine life challenges, like in my career, number one was, graduating in 2008.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
There just wasn't a whole lot out there. But luckily, landed on my feet at Camp Landing, which has just become, my home. Very fortunate to work with a lot of great individuals and, the utmost professionals in their field who have been very supportive, in my career. Like my boss, Matthew Corby, he, I guess, challenged me in making me or asking me to do things that I maybe wasn't so comfortable with at the time. But, I look back at it now and see that, that he trusted in my ability to do those things, even though I didn't trust myself at the time and, knew that I could do it.
That's awesome.
So that's, really how my career in fire has evolved, to getting more certifications and, becoming, a certified land manager, run-in burns, either that or running the firing operations. It's just, I didn't know that I needed that, but I mean, I guess he saw it before I did, and I really appreciate that.
That's a mark of a great leader. So along those lines, what goals are you pursuing right now in your life?
I would say I'm more maintaining.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like we're not getting any younger, and
Right. This is true. This is
yeah.
true.
I would say, you know, my role now is more just being, you know, the OG part of the crew. You know, I've been there a long time. I've
Well, you
gotten to
get to
see.
have a positive influence on the
Right.
folks that come in
Yeah. So
too.
I think that's more the role I'm playing now, is just, you know, teaching the new people to come in, like how to do the certain things that we do, whether it's the monitoring or the sampling, you know, on the fire line. It's just kind of being that person. I'm pretty comfortable where I'm at right now. I don't feel that I'm not, I guess, trying to better myself to go somewhere else. You know, it's like,
Sure,
you
sure.
know, I really, really like working at Camp Blanding. I said I just work with a lot of great people, very supportive people, and we have fun doing what we do. So,
Well, and you mentioned earlier you're doing that great aerial ignition training too.
yeah.
There's a lot of those that come up during the year. Lots of good training opportunities.
Yeah, and you know, with that was basically out of need. You know, some people are retiring, you know, or moving on, and there's just not a whole lot of people
Mm-hmm.
to fill those slots because there hasn't been that type of training in a while. So, you know, got approached and asked to do it, and I was pretty apprehensive, but ultimately did do it. It was a great course, and look forward to, you know, getting in the helo and, you know, dropping some balls.
I'm smiling because I'm thinking about Engine Academy.
Yeah.
And you've been able to have a positive influence on that as part of the cadre or the instructors. When I went through that class back in I think it was 2018 is when I finally got to go. That was at Camp Blanding. And so
Right.
all of these natural resource professionals converged on the military installation there. And there was this week-long class of tactical operations and learning how to use water delivery equipment and everything from calculations to wildland urban interface. And that class was really fun. And I remember it was so great to reconnect with you and talk, just kind of catch up a little bit, you know, because this is a small world in our type of work. And
Yeah,
at the very end of the class, you had, so there was this, what was that last day? What did you guys call it? It was some name for it. It was the simulation, the scenario.
Oh yeah, live fire day.
Live fire day at the very end of the class. We broke up and I ate one of those blueberries and I got some seeds in my throat. So we get the live fire day. We're broken up into teams and assigned to different trucks with people we don't know. There's like teams of 3 and we're driving along and they throw these different scenarios at you and you're out in the woods, you know, so you don't know where you're going. You just get a call over the radio and it's like the test, which was so fun. So we drive up on the first scenario. They'd lit the fire and it was kind of running across the sand hill. We had to put this layout, you know, 200 feet of hose and put this thing out. Well, we had to follow all this stuff.
Yeah, the scenario is a simulation, but the fire is very real.
But yes, you're right. That's a good thing to mention, that the fire is truly a real part of this. And so when I went to, I don't know, 3 or 4 different scenarios later, we come to the simulated small town.
I know where you're going with this.
And I remember pulling into this area and it's a bunch of those Connex containers structured like a little city. And we drive in there and we're like, okay, what's going on? And I see some of the instructors, like one was in a dress on the top of one, like waving at us as we're coming in. And then the assignment was to go assess the situation and figure out, you know, try to walk through, based on what we learned during the course, how to handle this live fire that's on the ground around all these this small town. So I remember my job was to get out of the engine, kind of walk around the sea to get people out of the area. And you were inside one of the Connex containers and you were pretending like you were a drunk person. And I was so focused on you that I left the engine and our other guys left the engine, and then they stole the truck and drove away with it.
Yeah, so
so we definitely did not pass that exercise. But I was so focused on you
yep.
that they took the truck.
So with that particular simulation, it's not so much that that's what you're necessarily gonna encounter.
Yeah.
Whenever
right.
you're put in that real life scenario, it's like basically what you just said. You lost focus on what your job was.
Exactly. You did
So,
a good job.
yeah, yeah, and that's the
was
point of
good
that.
action.
You know, in the afterwards AAR, it's just to kind of say, you know, like, this is not real. People don't generally act like this. I can't say, we do live in Florida, so you know, Florida man
is a real thing.
Florida man is a real thing. But
Yeah.
in that case, you know, just trying to
Right.
keep your focus. You're there to do a job, and you know, to keep that focus to where, you know, hopefully the people in those urban areas stay safe, but also, you know, you and your crew stay safe. You know, get the job done and get out of there.
Yes, yes, and that was an interesting one because there was fire like all around these little containers, several these little houses, and we're trying. The assignment was trying to get people to evacuate and get out of there because they were simulating a wildfire going on in the woods around, and you were the firefighters, and you had to get people out. So anyway, that was a fun. That just popped into my mind because that was good. But you get to do a lot of great, have a lot of good influence, and be a part of those kinds of trainings and pass that on to the next generation. Which
I mean,
love.
As a student myself going through that academy back in 2012, you know, it's high stress level. You know, you want to do good for yourself and for your agency, but you know, like, you remembered that scenario that was not very serious at all. You know, but right. Like, so just kind of like, you know, try to have some fun with it as well. Like, you know, it's good training, but you should also enjoy it and take something from it.
Yeah, good stuff. Well, Cynthia, it has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for taking the time to meet with us today.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I know we've been trying to make this happen for a minute, so I'm glad we finally could. I'm glad we got to catch up. Said Cully and I are old college buddies, so it's just good to catch up, man.
We're going to go to Sonny's after this. You guys still want to go to Sonny's?
Yeah, we can do something.
All right, well, thanks again, and we appreciate you taking us in another step beyond the fire.